So, why Grand Seiko? I think the better question might be, why not Grand Seiko? What's up guys, welcome back to the channel, thanks for clicking. I try to make videos on how to maximize your lifestyle independent of income. But I've been making a lot of watch videos, specifically Rolex videos. That's because a couple years ago I got my first Rolex and recently I got another one. While I've briefly wore and researched other brands, Rolex really has been my go-to. So if you're in the same boat, either you own a bunch of Rolexes or you're looking to get your first watch and you're only researching Rolexes, hopefully you get something from this video. Actually, I'm gonna start making a series of these types of videos. I might call it the Why Not series. So, why not Grand Seiko? In this review and analysis, I'll go over 4 things: history, movement, technology and innovation, design and finishing, and then finally value and resale value. So let's start with history. We're gonna spend some time on history because it's gonna overlap into movement, technology, and innovation. So similar to Rolex, again, I'm very familiar with Rolex. Grand Seiko has a lot of information on the website. I think we'll start here. Grand Seiko has been around for 60 years. They won all the chronometer competitions in Japan, so they entered the Swiss competition in 1964. In 1968, our movement were awarded the overall prize as the best mechanical watches in Geneva Observatory competition, and the world saw that the movements that would find their way into Grand Seiko were among the very best in the world. In the late 80s, they came up with a quartz movement with an accuracy of plus or minus 10 seconds a year. Their secret sauce was basically mining their own crystals and picking the best ones that they had. In 2003, they came up with a new quartz watch with a rating of 40,000 ampere per meter resistance to magnetism. That converts to 500 Gauss. For reference, the Rolex Milgauss is resistant up to 1,000 Gauss. In 2004, they came up with the now famous spring drive. Basically, the spring drive utilizes the traditional mainspring used in mechanical watches for decades, and they combine it with an electronic regulator. Basically, this offers the best of both worlds. A watch powered by the kinetic movement of the wearer, but much more accurate than the traditional mechanical watch. In 2004, we start to see tolerances of plus or minus 1 second per day. During this time, they realized that the power reserve was also something that they wanted to strive for, and they achieved a 72-hour power reserve. So, overlapping onto our second category, movement, technology, and innovation. In 2007, the R8 series movement came out, which was the world's most accurate luxury chronograph at plus or minus 1 second per day. Here you see if they've combined it with the GMT hand. I think this particular watch might be a little busy. In 2010, they came out with the High Beat 36,000. High beat movement makes the watch much more shock resistant and more accurate, usually compromising power reserve. But using MEMS technology, basically MEMS is the manufacturing process in which they're able to manufacture a lot more precisely, having the components fit into much tighter tolerances, thus reducing friction. So with the high beat technology, they were still able to maintain that 72-hour power reserve. Unfortunately for this movement though, static accuracy is rated at plus 5, minus 3 seconds per day, and actual accuracy, when you take into account that the watch moves from direction to direction, becomes plus 10 seconds a day, minus 1 second a day. In 2016, they came out with the 9R01 movement. This had an 8-day power reserve. Instead of 1 barrel, they used 3 barrels to store the electric power. And get this, the tolerances of accuracy on this thing, plus or minus half a second per day. So the next category is design, beauty, finishing. Now it's not fair to score a brand in this category without going into an individual model. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick a model with this awesome 9R01 movement. So only 3 options here anyways. I'm gonna go with the SBGD201. So going back to design, beauty, and finishing, this is a beautiful watch. The case material is a rare platinum 950, which contains 95% platinum. The newly developed Zaratsu polishing technique has also been used on this model to give the case a sharply defined edge and exquisite finish never before seen on a platinum case. The case measures 43 millimeters across. The pure white dial has a glittering diamond dust effect reminiscent of a winter morning in the Suwa region, a unique composite finish that ensures high visibility and glistens as it catches the light. And finally, we're going to wrap this up with our 4th scoring category, value and resale value. At $59,000, this carries a steep price tag, but I believe that there's a lot of value here. How do you put a price tag on an 8-day power reserve? How do you put a price tag on finishing techniques that are innovative and new to the industry? Then factor in that all of these are made in micro studios in Shiojuri, which basically is the SWAT team of watchmakers. So is $60,000 a lot of money? Yes, it is. Is it worth $60,000? Who knows? What we do know is that it gets listed for about 20% less on the secondhand market. We also have to consider that, like anything else, marketing plays a big part of people's perceptions of value. When you see Rolex on every billboard and tennis match and Formula One race, that helps improve perceived value, especially with luxury goods. You don't see that with Grand Seiko. So let's go ahead and give the Grand Seiko SBGD201 an overall score based on the 4 components we talked about. Obviously, these values will be subjective and won't mean anything until I start reviewing other watches. So don't put in the comments, why did I give this and this? It doesn't mean anything until I start comparing that to another watch and rating those watches in comparison. We'll start with history. The Grand Seiko has 60 years of history. To put that in perspective, Rolex and Omega both have over 100 years of history. But we also have to factor in that Grand Seiko was originated due to the internal splitting of a company so that there would be internal competition. Finally, we also have to remember that Grand Seiko won all those chronometer competitions. I'm going to give the Grand Seiko history a score of 7. Moving on to movement. 8-day power reserve. What else do you want me to say? There's nothing else on the market like this. The only thing I would say that we're missing is either an annual or a perpetual calendar. So I don't want to score this a 9 here, and at the same time it doesn't deserve a 10. So that's right guys, I'm going to do it. My video, my rules, I'm going to give it a 9.5. Moving on to design and finishing. Zaratsu polishing. That amazing dial. Did you guys see the close-ups of that? One thing I haven't mentioned is how much I like that blue seconds hand when matched with the colors and tones of this watch. Some might say it's plain. I think it's beautiful and timeless. The only thing that's missing here is information on the leather strap. Grand Seiko has sometimes been known to concentrate their detail on the case and dial, but neglecting the bracelet a little bit, and sometimes there's a disconnect in quality. With all that said, I'm going to give it a 7. And then finally we get into value and resale value. So again, we have to factor in what we talked about before, the lack of marketing, the 20% drop in resale value, but we have to remember all the technological advances in this watch and movement. Finally, we have to remember that these are not limited edition. I'm going to give it a 6, which brings the overall score to 29.5 out of a possible 40. I look forward to comparing this total to my next watch. Guys, I'm going to wrap up the video. Thanks so much for watching. This concludes our first episode of our Why Not series. Hopefully, if you were like me and kind of had tunnel vision, that Rolex is the best brand with the best watches out there, this opens up your perspective a little bit like it did for me. Just know that this is a learning experience for me just as much as it is for you. And finally, I just want to wrap up by saying that in spending a lot of time on the Grand Seiko website, if and when it comes time for me to buy my 3rd watch, this is definitely going to be high on the list as far as top contenders. If you liked the video, do me a favor, give it a thumbs up. If you're interested in my next episode, definitely subscribe to the channel. Drop me a comment down below. What brand would you like to see next? Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.